I want to thank everyone who's helped make this event possible. In particular, it's an immense privilege to be here with Helena Norberg-Hodge, the author, among other things, of this book, Ancient Futures, on sale in all good bookstores and at the back of the room. Why do I mention that in particular? Well, let me tell you a tiny story. So yesterday I was talking with somebody who was in the room, and this person said to me, "Rupert, thank you so much for recommending me to read Ancient Futures. I've just read it. It's absolutely brilliant. Everyone should read it." And it really is that simple. Everyone should read it. And so you might ask the question, okay, so there's Local Futures and Helena, and they're absolutely brilliant, and they're doing this superb localization stuff. What can Greenhouse, the green think tank, add to that? So I want to say a little bit about that. And the first thing I want to say is, Helena and I have produced this pamphlet, PostGrowth Localization. So what we in Greenhouse, I think, are really bringing to the party is a strong emphasis on and some detail on post-growth, because that's been, as Dario mentioned earlier, that's really been our main thing so far since we were launched a few years ago. And we've done this, the Post-Growth Project, this book, which is also available at good bookstores and at the back of the room. And what we do in the Post-Growth Project is really look in detail at why we need to move to a post-growth economy. This is a key dimension of the economics of happiness. The economics of happiness and localization cannot be achieved unless we get over the obsession with growth that is at present dominating our society. So that's why we need post-growth localization. That's what I'm going to talk about for a few minutes. I won't say that everyone, by the way, should read our book, The Post-Growth Project, but I would say that everyone who's chosen to be in this room should probably read it. So do avail yourself of the opportunity. Okay, next slide, please. So, as I say, we're up against it. We're up against what we call the hegemony of growthism, the domination of our thinking by pro-growth thinking. You turn on the radio in the morning, Radio 4, Radio 5 maybe, virtually every day you'll hear some story along the lines of, oh, people are worried that the economy is faltering or flatlining, or good news, new figures show that economic growth is on the up, GDP is rising. This is an assumption that is made, and it's virtually never questioned. This is the hegemony of growthism, the unargued, unanalyzed assumption that a growing economy is a good thing. Only some things get analyzed or conceptualized in public debate, and even in the discipline of economics itself. Others are excluded by the hegemonic way of seeing or thinking. We want to re-include them. So I want to sketch for you very briefly two visions of economics. Next slide, please. So here's a little graphic indicator of how the growthists conceptualize the economy, what the growthist vision or way of seeing is. And you can see those arrows pointing outwards, right? That's the idea that what the economy, of course, does and has to do is keep on growing. And the idea of the growthist is that really those arrows should go on out forever, as far as possible. And within that economy, you have this little sort of unimportant thing, the ecosystem. And the ecosystem is what we get, what we transform in the economy from. So we extract stuff from the ecosystem, we transform it, and then we dump our waste back into the ecosystem again. And that's how the economy works. Our needs and wants get satisfied by taking stuff from the ecosystem, transforming it in the economy. Or rather, allegedly, our needs and wants get satisfied in this way. Actually, of course, advertising creates most of our so-called needs. It ensures also that we are never satisfied, because a satisfied consumer is not good for more business. This permanent creation or production of wants and needs is what drives the allegedly endless growth of the economy. And the ultimate product of this economy is you. The ultimate product of this economy, more specifically, is you as a consumer. The very idea of the consumer is the ultimate consumer product. As long as you go around thinking of yourself primarily as a consumer, you're doing exactly what the advertisers want. So, the wants and needs we have are mostly artificially induced. It's not really business that serves us Rather, we serve business. We are slaves to the economy. We are slaves to economic growth. We are slaves especially to the mega multinational corporates. If we lived more simply, this slavery would stop. So there you have an outline of the hegemonic pre-analytic vision of mainstream economics. Before any actual economics gets done, this vision lays down the tracks on which it will get done. Now let's turn to the next slide, please, where we have a sketch of the post-Grossest vision of the economy. Now, this diagram is a lot more complicated. I won't take you through it all in detail. It needs to be more complicated because the economy and where it is positioned in relation to the rest of our lives and the rest of the world is actually a lot more complicated than mainstream economics would have you believe. So we've got two diagrams here. The top one shows a relatively empty world where you have the ecosystem and contained within it, much smaller than it, the economy. The bottom diagram reflects a situation closer to the situation we are actually in, where the ecosystem is struggling because the economy has grown enormously and is pushing up against the limits of the ecosystem on every side. And there's less and less ecosystem left to enable us to have essential, what are sometimes called services, and to enable us to have our welfare. What we need to do is to change from the Grossest to the post-Grossest vision of the economy, because we need to understand that that situation, as indicated in that second diagram there, is roughly the situation we're in. We need to understand that the world is full of people, of products, of economic activity, and that the space for the ecosystem is being pushed out. Next slide, please. But let's take a step back for a second and make sure that we're clear on this question. What actually is growth? What do they even mean by growth in the first place? So the simple answer to that question is they mean growth in one number, which is gross domestic product, GDP. And what GDP does is it sums up all economic activity. It puts together fun and funerals. It puts together organic food and oil spills and combines them all into one number. So just give you a little example of how that actually works. There was a very interesting study last year that showed that the Deepwater Horizon disaster had actually increased GDP, had caused more economic growth. That the devastation of the Gulf of Mexico through that oil spill, huge, vast oil spill, had actually been good for the economy. So that's okay then. Right. That's fine. You know, no more worries on that score. Growth is a completely crazy way to measure what we need. It's pointing us in exactly the wrong direction. But of course, I'm sometimes asked at this point, yes, but can't growth be green? What about green growth? Is there anything wrong if growth can be green? So let's be very clear about this. Green growth in some particular sectors of the economy is or would be a good thing. So we need more renewable energy, genuinely renewable energy, probably not biofuels, but we need more of the main forms of solar energy and wind energy. But what we need when we have that more is we need compensatorily less of the old grey or brown energy, yeah? If we have economic growth which is caused by more solar panels, but we still keep burning all the fossil fuels, that's not going to be sustainable. That's not going to give us a better future. So you can have green growth in one sector of the economy, but across the whole economy, you need to move to a post-growth situation. That's what we in Greenhouse are saying. Further net growth of the whole economy is no longer necessary. It's no longer necessary because we have an alternative. That's what we're discussing here today. It's no longer desirable because there is such a thing as enough, and there being such a thing as enough is an absolutely crucial part of this picture. And it's probably no longer even possible at this moment in history. If it is possible, it's certainly not desirable. Because if it is possible, it's possible only by shredding what we love. And that's what's happening right now. In the last parliament, for example, the government tried to shred our forests. They tried to shred our speed limits, all in the name of economic growth. Above all, what's being shredded, of course, is community. Next slide, please. So, endless growth is not possible, and even the Pokemons will agree with that. Next slide, please. But don't we need growth in order to be happy? Well, how is growth supposed to make us happy? And here there are a couple of main answers. The first one is, well, jobs make us happy, so we need growth for jobs, therefore we need growth. So the question becomes then, well, can a post-growth economy deliver jobs? There are many ways of talking about how it can. I just want to mention one, which is as we deglobalize and relocalize, there's going to be plenty to do, right? There's going to be, for example, we're going to be talking about this today, lots of food to grow. And lots of people needing to grow that food. There need never be a shortage of jobs, a shortage of livelihoods. Well, what about public services? Can a post-growth economy fund the NHS, for example? This is a reasonable question. We answer it in our book, The Post-Growth Project. I'll just mention one key point about that answer, and it's this. As we relocalize, as we re-establish community, our need for public services will reduce. Yeah? Having the NHS isn't a good thing in itself, right? Having the NHS is only a good thing because people are ill. So if people are not ill so much, you don't need to have a constantly growing NHS. Our mental and physical health is being damaged in all sorts of ways by our grossest, polluting, mentally unhealthy economy. Our physical and mental health will be so much better in a relocalizing world. We won't need to have endlessly more money to put into public services. So if post-growth can work, if we can answer those two questions there, well, why aren't we already trying it? I think the answer is this. We live in a very unequal society and have done for a long time. Now, if you live in a very unequal society and you want people to put up with that, there's two ways that you can do that, essentially. One is to say, we're going to start redistributing the wealth. The other is to say, it's fine, everybody's going to have more. And that is the dirty secret of growthism. It's an excuse for not sharing, right? It's a way of saying, don't worry, we don't need to share out the wealth. We don't need to make our society less unequal because everybody's going to have more because the economy is going to grow and it's going to keep growing forever, right? And that's really the mind flip that we need to make, to say that's actually a lie and it's proving disastrous. If we only share, if we share better, we won't need to keep growing the economy. So, next slide, please. The alternative to growthism, the new vision, the new paradigm, is post-growth. One planet living, living as if we have one planet, which when I last looked, we in fact did. What does this mean in a tiny bit more detail? As Molly has already mentioned, it means something like a bioregional economy, a provisioning economy, as I like to call it. An economy in which, rather than selling our labor and buying things that we allegedly need, we increasingly are enabled, along with others, to provide much of what we need for ourselves, starting with food. More generally, what that means is a relocalized economy or society. The way I think about this, we can debate this in the World Cafe, is that we need to think and communicate globally, but we need to act and protect locally. Next slide, please. So to sum this up, some of you will have seen this wonderful slide before. There is a beautiful coincidence in play here. We can relocalize our world. We no longer need to seek to grow the economy. We can deal with man-made climate change and other grave ecological threats. What we need to do to achieve these objectives all at the same time is the same thing as what we need to do in order to become happier. Post-growth localization is the economics of happiness. And the final slide, please. This has been a short talk. Think of it, if you will, as the thin end of a very large wedge. If you want to know more about what's in that wedge, please get the books that I've mentioned. Please have a read of the pamphlet that we're proud to be launching here today. And then there's some more references there. And we're going to have a chance to talk about this all starting now. Thank you very much.